They call him Jesus. He came to love, heal, and forgive. Let's make use of that hymn number 526, 526, because he lives.
Son of man and angels say, Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the continuation of our Religious Liberties Day. So glad to see so many of you on so early. Just bow your heads with me for a word of prayer as we open this evening service. Lord, as we come to you, we want to thank you for allowing us to come back here to be with you once again and to learn a little bit more today. We ask that you will open our minds to all that's going to be said. Help us to understand how the COVID-19 pandemic affects us as a church and the things that we can do to alleviate some of those effects. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, this evening we're going to be having a panel discussion, and we have 4 panelists here with us who are going to share to help us to understand a little bit more about COVID-19, its effects, how it has affected the church, some of our rights and freedoms as well, based in the Constitution, and how these protocols are affecting us. And I think we know from the name, it's no mask, no entry. And that's something that we see everywhere we go. It's something that's always in our faces. So this evening, we're going to have that discussion. And I'm going to invite the panelists to join me now just to say something about themselves. So first off, we have Elder Ken Reeves. Elder Reeves.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. Yes. So just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm Ken Reeves. I'm into technology and research. I'm an IT professional by heart. And I do a lot of research. So I've been an elder for many years now. I've been working with the church and all the different spheres that you can think about. And mainly in education is one of my loves for the church. So one, not just to see folk educated and making sound decisions, but also to make sure that you're educated to know that Christ is coming soon. A lot of things that we're focusing on are really moot. So we really need to be focused on getting that one job that God has given us to do. He's given us one job: go preach, teach, compel, that someone can be saved. And that's my focus. That's my focus for the rest of my life.
All right, well, welcome, Ken. Thanks for sharing a bit about you. And next we have Pastor Dr. A. George Mccallum. Just tell us a bit about yourself, Pastor.
Hi, thank you very much, Elder. Good evening, everyone. And it's good to be here, and especially for this program. For the most part, I pastor the City North District of Churches, and I'm currently serving pastoral ministry for the past 31 years, going to 32 years. Married with 2 young adults. My wife name is Diamond Gill. Mccallum. She also works at the office of the East Caribbean Conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. We also have with us Dr. Diamond Gill.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me. I supposed to say a little something about myself. Every time someone asks me to say something about myself, I'm like, what should I say? So let's start off with, again, I'm Diamond Gill from Trinidad, the beautiful island of Trinidad and Tobago. I'm a child of God. I love God. I love to do his work. I recently began practicing medicine professionally. And I love singing.
And finally, we have Mr. Steve Galla.
Good evening, everyone. I'm a member of the Providence Church, and I am also the Religious Liberty Leader Director there, and I'm an attorney at law in private practice. I've been in private practice for the last 23 years.
Thank you as well, Mr. Galla. And as we always do with these programs, we're going to get right in. we're not going to waste any time because we want to maximize the time that the panelists have to share, as well as the time for asking questions, because I know we have a lot of questions. And I want to start off by talking about COVID-19. What is COVID-19 and how does it affect us? Well, not us, the body. How does that affect our bodies?
Okay, I guess I can go first. A very simple question, because I think by now everybody has an idea as to what COVID-19 is. COVID-19, came into our lives in a very rude way in December 2019. It is still here with us today. COVID-19, as we know, began in Wuhan, China, and it is actually a disease. Yeah. COVID, that's the acronym 19, stands for, the CO stands for corona, the VI virus, and the D disease, the 19, the year that the virus was detected. So this is a disease caused by a virus known as severe acute respiratory syndrome, also known as SARS. And it's a virus that belongs to a group of a family known as the coronavirus family. Just as my name is Diamond Gill and I belong to the Gills family, COVID-19 belongs to a group of viruses known as the coronavirus. And among other relatives of coronavirus, we have the common cold or the flu. We have, SARS that I just mentioned, severe acute respiratory disease or syndrome. Right, so it's a disease caused by the virus. That's answer the first part of the SARS virus. That's answer the first part of your question. And so just to tell you a little bit about how it affects the body physically, because I believe COVID has been affecting us more than physically. It is affecting us, some of us mentally, emotionally, and may I add spiritually as well. In order for someone to be affected physically from COVID-19, they must be in contact with someone who has been infected with the virus. And in order for them to be infected by someone, they need to be exposed. When I say exposed, you'd understand, not having on their masks, not doing, keeping up with the health protocols, washing of the hands or sanitizing in cases where they can't wash their hands, and keeping their distance. And so this virus, like many other respiratory viruses, because it affects one of the major systems, which is the systems that allows us to breathe, the lungs, the respiratory system. So this disease, just like many other viruses, can quickly be spread via droplets. I know you know this. And if a person, as simple as coughing or sneezing or even speaking, these droplets can project out of their mouth. And if you're within that 6 feet, perimeter, it is quite high or likely for you to be infected with that virus, be exposed. As a matter of fact, in doing some research, I found out that, being in a space with someone for as short as 15 minutes, unguarded, can expose you to contracting COVID-19, And so just a little bit about the virus before I tell you how it affects the body and the symptoms that occurs. The word corona means crown, right? Because when you look at a virus has different characteristics. And on top of a virus, you would see some kind of spikes. We call them spike proteins. These proteins are very important in, knowing the biology of the virus, because it is the spike proteins that, infects the cells. When they penetrate a cell, then the virus then enters that cell, multiplies within that cell, and then spreads to other cells. All right. And when that happens, your immune system should kick in. Your natural immune system should kick in to produce antibodies, and these antibodies are responsible for fighting off any foreign pathogen, whether it's viruses or bacteria, but in this case, the COVID-19 disease, yeah? And so this is how a person becomes infected. When a person becomes infected, in the space of two days to 14 days, they begin to demonstrate symptoms. And I know you know some of the common ones and some of the mild ones. They might have a cough, a scratchy, itching throat, muscle aches, headaches, or they might have some runny nose. They might have a new taste or a loss of taste and smell, sometimes nausea and vomiting. And these are just some of the mild symptoms, but some of the more severe or serious symptoms that a person can experience who's been infected can be like, shortness of breath. Not all shortness of breath is serious. However, if that shortness of breath is associated with chest pains, or you begin to feel as though your chest is getting tight, you can't speak in full sentences, your words are, shortened, then that is time for you to call. I don't know what emergency number is over there. I think it's 411, but over here 911, and let the ambulance come right away, because you may need some oxygen therapy or mechanical ventilation. So this is COVID in a nutshell, and how it affects the body physically.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. That's a mouthful. And I was here making some notes as you were speaking, because I want to be sure about what you're saying. It's 511, not 411, but thanks, I understand. So basically, you said it's a family of viruses. This one is COVID-19. It has spike proteins, and some of the effects on us could be it could affect the breathing and lungs. It's spread by droplets, and it is easy to contract because it could be caught within 15 minutes of time with someone who has been exposed. It can cause cough, itchy throat, runny nose, loss of taste, smell, nausea, vomiting, shortness of breath, all these things. And that's the effect on the body. But apart from the body, is there any other way that COVID has affected us? And I know the other panelists were giving you time to go through the medicine there. So I'm gonna go to them now to find out about any other ways that they see COVID affecting us at this time.
Well, if I may continue, this situation has severely hampered our way of life. It has stopped us from interacting as individuals freely, hugging and all the nice things that we like to do, and being close to proximity to each other, speaking. It has put a little damper on it, and it's put a stigma where persons who don't follow protocols are looked at in a negative way. So there's some stigmatizing that has been associated with this disease, and it has caused churches to start to have a we and them scenario where narratives are being pushed on either side, and persons are trying to hold on to one narrative or the other. And all that is serving to do really is to divide, and it's setting precedents that has never been set before. And the church is trying to find a way to respond to all of these new things that is causing. And the biggest issue, I think, for the church is the inability to have face-to-face meetings, and as a result, there is a certain amount of fear that members sometimes face going to work, going to the supermarket, or coming to church. And some people prefer to just stay at home and don't get involved with other people and that kind of thing. And that's caused a little challenge for church, especially in terms of reaching out and working with the individual and that kind of thing.
Yes, I'm staring at my glasses. It says true or false.
It sounded
Sorry,
like
Ken,
somebody else they're saying something there. I'm not sure what happened.
Thank you. I was wondering if he's through, Mr. Host, and if I can continue in terms of the effects on the church.
Yes, Pastor, go ahead.
Yeah. I think I agree with Ken, and I think also there's a positive side to it where, so let me maybe mention some of the negative. He did mention most of them for that matter, but I also believe one of them is some kind of a distinction as to church, what you call affiliation and the commitment to church. It prevents individuals from doing that. But on the other hand, I think church leaders and members are given a chance to develop new approaches to churching their members. And while I'm saying that, I'm also literally feeling the effects of members who miss their social connection and communication. That's a serious effect there. But at the same time, we learn as church members and leaders new ways now of relating to those individuals. So where we have this physical distancing, I think there is a growth in the emotional aspect of it. We are more emotionally connected to our members, and especially if we use some of these innovative methods that are available, like calling, smiling, laughing with individuals, running a joke, not necessarily during church time. So those are some positives that we can find. While there are an abundance of negative, I think the positives are also in our best favor as far as the effects of the church is concerned.
All right, so I'm hearing that apart from the medical side, we have some social negatives and positives from the COVID-19 pandemic. And I heard Ken talk about not complying with protocols, and I think that's where I'm going to let Steve come in now to tell us about these protocols. Ken mentioned it in passing, but what does it mean for the church if
I wanted to elaborate a little bit more, but
sorry, Ken, you go ahead. You go ahead.
I got muted, and I was trying to figure out what the noise that was happening behind there. But no, I'm going to give way to Steve because he's the law mind here. So go ahead.
Right, thank you. Now, I think most of us are familiar with the protocols in terms of safety, temperature checks when you enter buildings, wearing masks, sanitizing, and so on. And the latest one, and perhaps the most controversial one, is the availability of several vaccines. And now we have boosters, which provide another level of protection against this disease. As the medical experts have indicated, the vaccine specifically is not immunization, but it protects against infection and transmission. It reduces the risk of those two factors significantly. I have always viewed it as, or rather, two analogies that I use in my perception of the vaccine. It's like a seatbelt in a vehicle. It may not prevent injury if there's an accident, but it would certainly reduce the risk thereof, especially serious injury, significantly. I had a client this year who was involved in an accident. He was traveling in a motor vehicle and in the backseat, and he was not seatbelted. His vehicle was struck, and unfortunately, he suffered serious injury, life-altering injury. He is now a quadriplegic. Can't move anything below his neck. All right, so that is how I view the vaccine, for example. That's my own personal opinion. I also view it as a cyclist who wears a helmet. I'm a cyclist as well, and riding with a helmet does not insulate me against injury, but it reduces the risk of injury to the head in particular tremendously. All right, so that's how I view that particular measure in the arsenal against the fight against this against the virus itself. Now, the mention was made about that persons are stigmatized who do not comply with the the safety protocols and so on. Now, what I would say is this. In this discussion, this debate and so on, we hear about rights and discrimination, that sort of thing. And I'm sure we may have the opportunity to expand later on as the discussion develops. But let us bear these factors in mind. All right, and let's be honest. 2 years ago, none of us here listening, bar none, could have contemplated the circumstances we face now. None of us could even begin to conceptualize or embrace the fact that planes will not be flying, not only to Barbados, but all across the world. All aircraft were grounded at some point. We could not have conceptualized the fact that children cannot attend school face to face. They all now need to be schooled via a device or in forms like this. We could not have contemplated that we weren't able to assemble together. And the reason for this is because we are facing an extremely contagious, deadly virus. That is what we are facing. This is not some academic discussion about something that could happen in the future and so on. We are faced with a virus that is highly contagious. It is deadly. The figures have indicated so far that the death rate has passed 5 million across the world. All right. So that is what we are facing. We're not facing an epidemic where a disease affects a particular country or a particular region. This is something that has affected the human race. Arguably, the biggest crisis we've had to face since the Second World War, because every person on planet Earth has been affected by COVID-19. And this thing can make you ill, it can kill you. So this is nothing to play with and to philosophize about and so forth. So I'm not surprised if persons can be a bit concerned where persons who would want to refuse to take a temperature test when they're entering the building, or to be sanitized, or people are walking around in a group without a mask. I am not surprised if persons become concerned at that. I don't see that as a stigma. I see that as a concern for your personal safety. All right. And let's be honest, if you're at work or if our children are at school and they become ill, catch a flu, whatever, we know that our children cannot return until a medical certificate has been produced, certified by a doctor, indicating that the person is fit to return, meaning that they are free of the disease, they are able themselves, and also that they will not be a danger to those around them. That is what this crisis has shown up. It has shown up the very real probability, not mere possibility, that persons can infect others and others can be infected and so on and so on. This thing can increase, the infection rate can increase geometrically. So that is what, those are the circumstances we are facing. Those are the very real and harsh circumstances we are facing. So I would urge that when we use terms like stigmatize and discrimination and so on, we be very careful, because what we are facing are unusual circumstances that has affected persons' lives, their livelihood, and it has killed quite a few millions already, right? Now, one other ground rule I will lay down at the outset is that when we speak about rights, and I've said this in a forum at Black Rock before, no human right in Barbados or anywhere in the world is absolute. My right to obtain property and enjoy property and own property does not allow me to take yours. My right to enjoy property stops when there's a possibility or likelihood that it can violate your right to obtain property, to enjoy yours. And every single human right is constrained by two factors, where issues of public health and public safety are concerned, or if those two issues are, if there's a real risk of public safety and public health being undermined or compromised, all human rights must take second place. Because in circumstances like that, the race is under threat. So it cannot be business as usual. We must first deal with the threat, contain it, and eliminate it. Then we can get back to business. So I just want to set those basic, a few basic foundation principles that we can expand on as the evening goes on. Thank you.
If I may pick back up from where it left off. This whole it's interesting that Steve went down that line. I want to look at the context of the church and how we are responding to some of these things. And I use the word stigma, and I will use it again because the context that I'm using it in is not the way that Steve is looking at. While Steve's concept, that side is fine. Information or misinformation is a very interesting thing. And when we talked about the masking of individuals, it's very important to understand concepts like viral load, how much micro droplets are required to infect an individual, where do micro droplets or heavier droplets, how do they cause infection? There is no simple, I find sometimes we oversimplify this whole thing with COVID-19 and sometimes we try to use a one shoe fit all to try to find as a solution. And I'm saying we got to be very careful. I was observing an individual walking in an open area and they was approaching somebody else. And as they got closer to the individual, they put up the mask, and the other individual who was completely masked says, "You know you're supposed to go on your mask all the time." That tells me that there is a mindset out there that feels that persons who don't have their mask on all the time is doing something wrong. It's from that perspective that I was saying that there is some negative, let me use another word, some negative emotions arriving when you see a person not having on a mask in an open area. And of course, most of you know that in an open area, the micro droplets just simply go up and go on the very way to join with their other friends wherever they are. And the issue is when you're in enclosed environments or close proximity for extended period of times, 15 minutes or more. And or sometimes even a little bit less, but it depends on your proximity and the viral load that is being expelled from the individual. I'm not sure where we got the 6 foot thing, the test that I saw in early 2020, when they had the air-free room and they tickled their noses, and you had a big burly man, you had a small lady, you had different subjects, and they were sneezing to see exactly how far the expellant would go. And with the black guy, the expellant went as far as 10 feet. And then the heavier droplets fell to the ground in a matter of seconds. But when you look under the camera that was used specifically to assess micro droplets, they just hung around in the air. They were just there looking for some way to get out. But unfortunately, that study has not been looked at or even mentioned or whatever. But I guess at some point in the future, we can look at viral load and how much a person can be infected from a small, but I have not seen a study that actually says how much is required to infect an individual. There's another thing I wanted to say that I saw on the World Health website, when they in their definition of what a vaccine is or what it does. And I think we have to be very careful when we use the word vaccine, and we don't explain what we actually mean, because the meaning has changed. And actually the World Health Organization, they actually changed the meaning or changed some names, I should say, before we knew that somebody has their phone, their device unmuted. Yes, when you guys are, so just be careful to make sure you don't unmute your device unless you're asking a question. You put your hand up.
Thanks, Ken. I was gonna say that when you finished.
You're welcome. Vaccines traditionally have been known to stop infection, to stop spread, and to prevent further infection. So you would have a strong immune, what we call an immune response from the vaccine. This is how it was done before. And I'm pretty sure Dr. Any other doctors in our midst can verify that that's what the vaccines were doing before. This particular thing now, they don't say that it stopped infection. What is said, and we have to be very careful what we read. It says it prevents severe disease. That's what it's designed to do. And I don't want to say the word vaccine because that's not how we understood vaccines to work. But that's just me looking at the semantics. Because when we use the word vaccine, it gives the impression of protection to stop you from spreading and to stop you from being infected. That's what the word vaccine conveys when it is used. However, according to the World Health Organization, that's not what this corona therapy does. It doesn't do that. What it does, it prevents severe disease, and it is designed, as the doctor was explaining earlier with the spike protein. We can get technical into the how this thing actually goes to do its infection. And the church has always been pro-vaccination, always has been. And if you look at our site under our response to vaccine, and actually we just reaffirmed this, and you can find that on the ANN site, the reaffirmation, how we support vaccinations. We do. So the challenge comes when you have something that doesn't fit the model that we understand vaccines to fit. Okay, so that's my caution in terms of using that word for vaccine when they say it does not. And actually I have on the medxriv.org site, and Dr. Fauci himself has said that when we swab the nasal pharynx of a fully vaccinated individual, we find the same amount of virus. The viral load is the same. There are some studies that give you that some of the viral load for a vaccinated individual is actually less, and a person don't shed as much. We can talk about shedding or that's a term, don't worry. The person does not infect somebody else as much when they have the vaccine, is what some studies say. But this study is saying
but Ken, before you move on,
so sorry, I just want to bring that context to show you why some people have questions in their head. So they would say, but wearing the mask all the time doesn't make scientific sense. Or they might say, but I have already contracted the virus. Why would I need to get a shot to tell my body to create antibodies that it already has? So that's why I was saying we have to be careful, because the persons who think like that, or we call them vaccine hesitant persons, they tend to be looked at in a negative light, and the anti-vaxxers. I'm not an anti-vaxxer, by the way. But those anti-vaxxers, they tend to be. So I just wanted to support that point of view that was coming, saying that it is a real thing where people look at you in a negative light if you are not following the narrative that's being pushed. Go ahead.
All right. I want to go to Diamond because he said a lot of stuff there, and I want the doctor to come in and clarify some of it for us, because you told us what your understanding of a vaccine is. So I would like to get the medical definition so that we understand what the professionals understand a vaccine to be.
You're muted.
Thank you. Yes. Elder Reeves did quite a good job at explaining vaccination. And vaccines aren't, because of COVID, I think a lot of people have questions and, it's all up in the air about this vaccine. But since we were young, I think as from birth, we've been receiving vaccines, at 2 months, at 6 months, at 8 months, and I can't recall us ever having issues with, receiving a vaccine. I guess it's because of the time frame and everything else that people would say. But vaccines are actually, they contain tiny fragments of a disease causing organism, I should say. Sometimes, so we call that a live vaccine. Some others may contain, a copy of not the disease, but something that mimics the disease, and that is able to mount a response, an immune response against a viral or any pathogen in the body, right? And vaccines aren't only like a virus or, alone. Vaccines actually contain more than just a copy of what we're trying to fight against or an antibody. And they have other components like antigens, it's an active component, it generates an immune response, and then it makes this vaccine that we're taking very active. There are also preservatives in vaccines, and what the preservatives does is it prevents the vaccine from becoming contaminated. So you may go to your physician, be vaccinated and realize that they didn't use all the vaccines and wonder why. But it's because, they don't have to use all, and, because there are preservatives in the vaccine can be stored for later use. There are also stabilizers in vaccines, and these help prevent chemical reactions from occurring within the vaccine, and also keeps the vaccine components free. They don't stick to each other. They're a host of other things like surfactants, residuals, dilutants, adjuvants, and the list can go on. And as I don't think as Elder Reeves was saying, sorry, I'm not here to tell anybody take a vaccine, take the vaccine, because I don't think it is the vaccine that helps cure COVID. I think vaccination does, and that's a difference. Vaccines don't cure COVID, vaccination does. So it is up to you, out there to do your reading and do your research. It is still your free moral choice. But as Elder Rees was saying, a vaccinated person stands at, a place where he or she is at a lower risk of being hospitalized, of having of having complications from the COVID virus, severe complications, that is, of even dying. And I'm not sure if, being vaccinated would prevent you from spreading the virus to a lesser extent, but I do know that if you do contract it, your symptoms are definitely going to be a shorter time period, and it is going to have less effects. The virus is going to have less effects on your body. I don't know if that answered your question, host.
I also wanted you to address, Elder Ken was telling us about the definition and how before vaccines were understood to prevent disease and it was changed. I just wanted some clarity on that as well.
Yeah, actually, the truth is the COVID-19 vaccine does not cure COVID-19 disease. Before, we have had instances where persons would have been vaccinated, and because of the vaccine, for example, polio, because of the vaccine would have, developed the disease or contracted the disease. So there is the possibility of being vaccinated, right? And having or getting the disease or virus or whatever pathogen is being circulating. But for sure, for the COVID-19 vaccine, no study. I haven't seen any studies done on any vaccine that can completely cure COVID. What it does is just simply reduce or minimize the symptoms that present or that you can suffer from.
Okay. So what I'm understanding you to have said just now is that we've had vaccinations before that reduced the risk of infection, maybe the symptoms, but persons were still able to get the disease, basically. Okay. I have another question here, and then I want to go to because Ken made a point there, and he was talking about narratives. But I have this question first. I've been hearing that Christians cannot take the vaccine because they're developed from aborted fetus cells. And I did hear Ken say that we've always supported vaccination as a church. So I'm trying to understand how we marry those two things. If that is so, maybe Diamond may be better able to deal with that. And I see a hand, and I want to encourage you to answer your questions, raise your hands, and come in. I see you, Sister Catherine. So after we take Diamond, we'll come to you. And then I'm going to go to the pastor because I want to talk about the narratives, according to Ken, that are being pushed and how we use our church. Because Ken is talking about persons being marginalized, ostracized as a result of COVID-19. And I want to know if that applies in the church as well. If we are setting out to do that, if that's our intention, if it has happened, and how we plan to correct it. So yes, Diamond, then Catherine, and then you, Pastor Mccallum.
Okay, if I understand you clearly. As a church, I can't speak across the board because I don't know what goes on in every church. However, from my little experience in the church I attend, for the most part, persons, leaders especially, tend to push that, have respect for a person's choice, yeah, vaccinated or not vaccinated. And this whole thing about stigmatizing someone who isn't is prohibited, and it was also spoken of from the leaders of the church. And I tend to agree with that approach toward persons who choose not to. I mean, at the end of the day, a person has to make the choice that would benefit them the most and would make them responsible persons, not just to themselves, but to the persons that they live with, the persons that they work with. And if they are doing the best that they can to keep themselves healthy without being vaccinated, then so be it, right? But the church, from my perspective, hasn't been really, demanding persons to be vaccinated. And if you ask me, should they? I don't think they should. At the end of the day, again, it is an individual choice, right? We would hope that persons would make the best choice, for themselves and for those around them, but it's their choice. So I agree with the fact that we should respect a person's view and a person's choice.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you very much. I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in there very quickly. I give you 30 seconds before we go to Sister Catherine.
Diamond did a pretty good job there.
All right, Sister Catherine.
Good afternoon. I came in a little late, so I was not too sure when questions can be asked. What Sister Diamond just said at the end is a very valid point. She made a very valid point there. Now, the whole issue of COVID really, I can see why it have persons who want to run away from it. I want to make 2 points. But first is this: I was explaining to someone this morning what COVID looked like to me. I have 2 beautiful little pups that my daughters brought home and leave for Granny to look after, I should say. So that is me before COVID, yeah? Then I heard that I am ill and I need this vaccine. All of a sudden I have a cat. So I look at the vaccine as the dogs as the COVID vaccine that is put into my body. The cat now is running because the COVID is chasing after the cat. In other words, my body seems to be healthy. And when I get this vaccine, it is kind of running after, trying to protect what is coming, running after what is, I should say, okay, and chasing it out of my body. And this vaccine is supposed to cover me so that when whatever is coming behind will make it okay. That's how I view COVID. We are into a position where everybody is of the opinion, or the majority of us, we are of the opinion that being vaccinated is the right thing to do. It will save us from whatever disease is coming behind us. And I keep saying to persons, and I'm asking the question, before we had the vaccine, we were supposed to sanitize, wear your mask, temperature taking. And in doing that, I found that we were not as badly off as we are now that we have the vaccine. I know what is happening is that we have dropped the ball and we decided we're not going to mask as we should. When you go into business places, they're not even taking your temperature. You're not sanitizing. And I find that that is one of the, to me, that is the greatest problem that we have, because we have dropped those things that we used to do. Because some of us believe that the vaccine cured all, to realize that we are having more problems now because we are not doing those things. So my thing is, how can I be convinced that having a vaccine really puts me into a better position, when although we hear a lot about what is conspiracy theory and that kind of thing, when we also know personally persons who have taken the vaccine who have some kind of complication, and we are yet still trying to convince the whole world that vaccine is the right way to go. It leaves you, I can see why people who have not been vaccinated are very, very hesitant. And some persons who are vaccinated are very afraid. And someone needs to really address this is what is happening. And instead of saying to me, go, 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 vaccine, vaccinated, vaccine, vaccinated, speak up and say exactly what is happening. Vaccinated, okay. Is it good or is it not? Unvaccinated, you know, those questions I have.
I think you may have missed the contribution from Steve earlier. I think he did a really good job
I heard
dealing with it. Oh, you heard it, okay. But in his explanation, he explained the vaccine as an additional layer of protection, so that you do what you're doing already, but you add this in as well. And he went through the whole analogy with seatbelt and everything. I hope you heard all of that. I think that really is one of the better answers, and that's the answer that I often use as well. In the sense that it doesn't stop, but it helps.
That needs explaining. I'm not sure if Diamond is going to help you along here. What Sister Catherine is saying is so critical. The one shoe fit all scenario, we need to be very careful about it. And to say that it offers a level of protection, we need to explain what that really means. We can't just say it offers a level of protection, because persons are equating that statement to mean that is protecting me from reinfection.
And this is why I was going to what Dr. Diamond said. You know, that's where I was going. That's where I was going. So just give me a minute. Let me get where.
Okay. All right.
Dr. Diamond then came in and explained to us how it exposes our body. It helps us to build up these antibodies, and because we have it, we have less effects. It's for a shorter time span, so that it doesn't stop you from getting it, but it reduces the severity. It reduces the time that you are down and out for. If you take those two things together, to me, I feel like that question has been addressed in our discussion thus far. Maybe it wasn't as succinct as it should have been, but I think we've addressed that part. I want to go to Pastor Mccallum. Rochelle, I see your hand. I'm going to come to you, but I want to go to Pastor Mccallum very quickly to tell us about, because I heard Sister Catherine saying the narrative is go, go, go. Is that the church's narrative? Should it be the church's narrative? And if someone else has a different narrative, should we stop them? All right, I'm not hearing from our pastor. Let's go to Rochelle. I'll come to you after, Ken.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
I have 3 questions. The first is, are vaccines not to prevent diseases? 1. 2, for 1.5 years, we've been hearing from some medical professionals that COVID is a very bad flu. That is what I heard from the jump. It is a very, very bad flu, and that there's no need for a vaccine. Why wasn't it taken more into consideration what these health professionals were saying? And 3, should we as a church push our health message more now than ever? Because God has given us the health message for the world. This pandemic it has taken the world by surprise, but I don't think that it should have taken our church by surprise, because it is written that these things will come. So why aren't we out there spreading the message as God has told us to do? And those are my 3 questions.
Let me just jump in, and I just want to go back a little bit to Sister, what's her name?
Catherine?
Yes, Sister Catherine. I understand Sister Catherine's point of view, where she's coming from, because it's the frustration of a lot of persons. Why take the vaccine if it's not curing you, and etc. Why is it that you can take the vaccine and still be reinfected, etc.? But what I didn't mention earlier, when I was just going through the biology of, COVID, is the whole concept of variants and mutations, right? We would have been hearing about the different Delta variants that has been popping up, right? And the latest, I think, was the Mu. The same spike proteins I was telling you guys about, scientists usually study these, they study the virus and the spike proteins in an attempt to understand how this virus works, how long this virus, would stay in your system, how to treat the virus. Because just like, I told you before that COVID-19 is part of a family called coronavirus. A family has different persons. I'm not the same as my mom. My mom is not the same as my dad or my siblings. And coronavirus is just COVID-19 is just part of this whole coronavirus family. So even though now I might see COVID-19 displaying high fever, shortness of breath, chest pains, and a host of other symptoms, because these spike proteins that I was telling you about are being studied, and because they change from time to time, just like my mom and dad got married and have children, my siblings got married and they have children, the lineage continues to go on, this virus continues to mutate. So that is why it's difficult for a person to be, and it's a new virus too. We need to remember it's a new virus. It's difficult for a person to be vaccinated against COVID and be cured, because there's so many variants, so many mutations, so many strains, and scientists are still coming, researching and trying to come up with a way to really, reduce the viral load, reduce the number of diseases that are happening, and decrease mortality and morbidity. And but I think it's fair for persons to question it, because if I take something, a vaccine, I want to be cured. If I take a medication, any medication, I want to know that I don't get, if I take a medication for high blood pressure, I want to know that my blood pressure would, remain normal. And we could even use that because sometimes we have high blood pressure. We take a tablet, whatever tablet we take, and our pressure still does not go back to base 120 over 80. We have to continue taking tablets to ensure that it stays down. And it's the same concept with the vaccine. And we need to understand it's not like, we're shoving it down your throat and saying there's no other way. But we're saying it is a way that can help not just you, but the healthcare professionals, the healthcare system, your family, those who you come in contact with. And it's not just about the vaccine, it's more than that.
Thank you. I see Steve's hand. We still have to respond to Rochelle. So I want us to take time to do that. And I heard Diamond partially answer one of those questions talking about
dress as well.
Yes, Steve.
Okay. Right. As the doctor, sorry, I don't recall it. I don't recall your name. Apologize for that. She ended by saying that it is not just about the vaccine. It's also about the other measures that you put in place as an additional defense mechanism to this thing, right? As I mentioned earlier, I'm not a medical expert, but as far as I understand it, the vaccine is not a silver bullet. It is not a cure-all. We apply this in addition to the other protocols: eating healthy, sanitizing, masking, distancing, what have you, until we wrestle this thing to the ground. Now, I saw a person in the chat indicating that they're unsure as to what to believe from the public service announcements and so forth, I would imagine. My advice would be, and this is the approach that I took personally, I sought out doctors that I knew personally, men that had a track record, whose word I trusted for years. I didn't go on the internet. I didn't go and listen to Dr. Fauci, well, not saying he's not credible. I didn't go to some stranger. I went to someone I knew, someone I dealt with before, and I got results. That is what we can do as well. You see, we need to stop listening to some of the garbage, because that's what it is, that's coming out of the internet. These theories here that it is trying to do this and it's trying to do that, and nobody knows what is going to happen. Is a virus created by man. All this kind of rubbish, and we're verily making ourselves sick by imbibing a lot of this misinformation. When there are doctors that we all know, and don't tell me that you can't go to a doctor that you can't trust. Don't tell me you've never gone to a doctor in your life. If not, you're lying. Plain and simple. Go to your local doctor, and he will advise you accordingly. He will put you right. I cannot conceive of a doctor deliberately giving a patient misinformation that can cause them harm. That strikes at the heart of his oath in his profession. So if you're skeptical about information coming from the public service, go to your own private doctor. If he isn't able to answer you, I am certain, beyond doubt, he can point you to someone who can. So let's not create problems where they don't exist. All right. The vaccine is, as far as I understand it, and I defer to the experts, the vaccine is not a silver bullet. It's not a cure-all. It can be used in addition to the other measures. And when we do that, the chances of infection or transmission would be significantly reduced. And I would rather take the odds of a vaccine giving me 90% protection or 95% protection or even 80% protection than not taking it and having my protection reduced by the same measure. It's a simple matter. All right. I have not heard the notion where doctors in Barbados who said public or in the Ministry of Health and so on say regarding COVID as a bad flu. I have not heard it, but that doesn't mean that description didn't occur. But my point is, there are measures that we can take to combat this thing. All right. Excuse me. in terms of vaccination, the numbers of there are persons who have passed on who are vaccinated, yes. But is that the rule or is that the exception? Persons who are fully vaccinated were reinfected or were infected. But is that the rule or is that the exception? That's what we have to look at. Right?
Thank you, Steve.
I wanted to answer. I wanted to get to Rosha. I think we probably get back. I probably get back to Stephen a little bit. Just to throw this out there. In 2020, 98% of those who contracted the virus, the wild virus, 98% survived. 2% either died or had some severe complications. 2%. Out of those who have been vaccinated, we do have a small percentage who are not making it. The question that Steve ended off asking, I could spin that for those who have been exposed to the virus and survived. But we're not going to get into that. Getting back to what Rochelle was asking, and you had a question there, Mr. Moderator, about the in vitro creation of using aborted cells. We didn't really get to talk about that at all. You were trying to ask about the marrying of the two, and you didn't use the word in vitro, but I was just helping it along because as far as I am been told and aware in the studies, I haven't seen where those who are in the labs going around for aborted fetal cells to try to create anything. As far as I'm aware, these are in vitro. It means it's created in a lab, and you've got your thing from there. So you know that they have this thing. Nobody died while creating this post or this kind of thing. As far as I'm aware, that's all right. Diamond could correct me, but as far as I'm aware, those are in vitro. They're not taken from somebody, as far as I'm aware. But that is something that y'all can decide on. As far as the church's response to people, the church is saying, we are giving you freedom of choice. The church put out a statement, or a church put out a statement saying, we, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, is giving you freedom of choice. You can or you don't have to. And I think that is good governance. I think that is a sound way to go to allow persons to make up their mind. They do say that they would like to see you vaccinated, but in the light of what's going on in the UK, which is some strange thing, the UK is what, 80% vaccinated or something like that, and there are more people. The jab is supposed to stop severe disease, and yet in the UK, the hospital beds are taken up. The majority of hospital beds are taken up by those who are fully vaccinated. So it says to me, a one size fit all may have some challenges, and that's why you have members in our church would say, but wait, hang on, I thought that this and I thought that that. So what's really going on? And then like today, where you would hear those in our government say that they will not take into account the issues of antibodies, as in you having contracted the disease before, and you have developed antibodies as a result of a robust, and there are hundreds of studies out there now that lets you know that natural immunity is always better than whatever jab you may have. As far as the church is concerned, the church don't want to have people fighting and left and right and back and forth. The church is interested in truth, and the church is interested in saving lives. And the challenge that church members have is not necessarily with the church per se, but they have a problem with the confusing or conflicting information. Steve talked about the conspiracy theorists, and I'm not sure that the majority of people that I have come into contact are even thinking about conspiracy theorists. They're looking at the facts and saying, but the whole point of immunization or vaccination is to prime your body to create antibodies. If your body has already created the antibody, then why do I need to get it? And especially in the light, with all these facts, it's a hard sell, as one of the senators told the head of CDC. It is a very hard sell when you have all of this information that shows that natural immunity. I have been a firefighter. I've been on the front line as a nurse. I contracted the virus. I overcame it. I beat it, lick it down, because God has made us fearfully and wonderfully. I lick it down, tell it go to France. And I've been following the health message, and I'm good. So now in 2021, you're saying if I don't take the vaccine, which is supposed to do the same thing that my body has already done, I'm going to lose my job. I think all members have a challenge with those types of issues. That's what's going on. And I think that maybe we need to lend some hope and some help to guide them as they are going through this whole process. And the last thing, there was one other thing that Rochelle was asking. Anyway, I would give way to the hands.
Let me help you with what Rochelle asked. But I think you answered all, actually. You really addressed all of them. So
right,
yes,
so
we can give way to the hands.
yes.
I'll take them in the order of Sister Shirley, Sister Pam, and then Corinne. And there were two other hands, but I realized that they were taken down. I'm not certain if those persons want to come back in at some point after. So Sister Shirley.
Good evening. I've listened, and the question I want to ask, yeah, we're going to be experts, but why not go to the best expert ever and ask him, God, whether we should take the vaccine or not, and whatever he advises us to do, we do. How about that?
Well, I don't think that's a question. I think that's more of a comment. And I agree with you. It's something we should pray about. We should pray about everything. Sister Pam?
Hi, good evening. Okay, in terms of the overall wellness and so on of persons living in this pandemic, one of the things, yes, that we encourage is the vaccination program, is the other protocols in terms of the physical distancing, the wearing of masks and so on. But a point that came out earlier, a question I think that may have been asked, is in terms of the whole health and health reform that we as a church have been preaching, practicing for quite some time in terms of overall health and wellness. And this is something that everyone is still not on board with, and we should consider embracing the health message in terms of overall health and wellness. The point that we made in terms of our dietary habits, for instance, there are several aspects that we keep pushing in terms of health reform, and that is basically the New Start program. And in this program, what we're looking at is the types of food that one consumes to help strengthen the immunity. The whole thing with the COVID-19, with any disease or whatever we may be facing, is the whole immunity of the person. And we need to boost the immunity. In this period, we actually stress a lot of vitamin C and vitamin D, getting into the sunshine, getting into the D3s. We stress things like the fruits, the citrus fruits with the vitamin C. Let's see if we can get back to nature, get back to the basics instead of the KFC, the meats, the other junk foods and so on. If we can get back to basics in terms of using those fruits and vegetables that can actually strengthen our immunity. Because when we have a good immunity, pretty much most things, they are pretty much well warded off. And also in looking at the COVID-19 and how it affects persons, what I would have mentioned in another forum is that the comorbidities, these are actually one of the key things that can actually carry people down quicker if they have the COVID as well. Because as I said, the two of them just don't play. And it is for that reason that we also emphasize the health message in terms of ensuring that persons have good health so that the diabetes, the hypertension, the obesity, the cardiac illnesses, that we have them at bay. We have a program going on now sponsored by the East Caribbean Conference, and we are looking again at these chronic illnesses. I'm encouraging persons. I mean, we talk a lot, but we need to now walk the talk. We need to do exactly what has been admonished in the health circles in terms of our church programming as well, so that we are all in line. Diabetes, hypertension, obesity, these can be reversed. We can look to see how best we can reverse them. We can take advantage of what has been shared with us over the years so that our immune system is well prepared for whatever comes. Because one would find that if we have a strong immunity, that pretty much, I'm not saying it will never happen, but pretty much you will be in a good position to ward off most of these illnesses that will be within the area, that you can have healthy lives, that you can have productive lives. So most of all, let's go back to basics. Let's admonish others to go back to basics. And for those of you who may not have heard about the Reach Health program that's being sponsored by the East Caribbean Conference, you still have the opportunity that you can register into the program. This program is showing persons how they can reverse these chronic illnesses. That is the focus, and that should be our focus as well. Getting strong and healthy, having strong immunity, and where it's necessary, we should be vaccinated as well. We should ward off whatever is coming our way. But with strong immunity, good health, I'm sure that God, indeed God, He will be by our side and He will see us through. In God, all things are possible. And I know that He is right there by our side. He has given us the health message. Come on, He has given to us the health message. Why not let's embrace it and run with it so that we can be the type of healthy individuals that He would have us to be, that we in turn can share the message with others. Thank you very much.
Yes, Dr. Dupuy, I see you there. Now I see the surname. I know who it is.
Trying to get there. All right. I'm commenting on what Ken said about the increase in hospitalizations in the UK among fully vaccinated people. I was reading this week that they're no longer considered fully vaccinated because they haven't had the booster. So when yes, and there were patients actually saying they wish they had gotten the booster, they had books, etc., etc. So now these people are no longer considered fully vaccinated because they haven't had the booster shot. Just throwing that in.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Pastor Mccallum, I see you're back. So you can come in and address the church and the way the church ought to relate to persons. Whether we are pushing a narrative or not pushing, if it's a neutral or safe space, all of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you very much, El Mario. Good evening again, everyone. I'm just going to share something with you from a church perspective as we continue discussion. And this is coming from the Adventist health emphasis is based on biblical revelation, the inspired writings of not just E.G. White, but others in the health ministry. And so as we encourage responsible immunization/vaccination, and this is a position from the Seventh-day Adventist Church from the General Conference, which was voted in April 15, 2015. As such, we encourage responsible immunization/vaccination and have no religious or faith-based reason not to encourage our adherents or members to responsibly participate in protective and preventive immunization programs. We value the health and safety. We value the health and safety of the population, which includes the herd immunization. One moment, please. Come and give me 5 minutes. Yeah, which includes herd immunization or whatever program there is. We value the health and safety of the population, which includes the maintenance of herd immunity. We are not the conscience, and I want you to listen to this part very carefully. We are not the conscience of the individual church member and recognize individual choices. These are exercised by the individual. The choice not to be immunized is not and should not be seen as the position taken, a dogma position taken by the church. The choice not to immunize is not and should not be seen as the dogma nor the doctrine of Seventh-day Adventist Church. Now, this statement was voted by the General Conference of the Seventh-day Adventist Administrative Committee in Silver Spring, Maryland, April 15, 2015. Now, why am I saying this? Individual church leaders who want to or feel justified to come out and make special statement is got to be up to them. But for the most part, church leaders are advised to stay by that which the church position is and the spirit of prophecy. It means, therefore, that church members are not advised to push their personal opinion in the church or on any of the various platforms that we set up by the church. You can do that personally if you so feel or desire, but it cannot be in the space or on behalf of the church. The church is saying individual members have the responsibility to do so. And here is where we want to encourage also. And I want to agree with Sister Pam. I believe that one of the best things that we can do is to make sure that we are properly, our system is immune. Our immune system is strong and can withstand any such thing. You're hearing that your church, the part that we are of, is very much in agreement to the public health recommendations, but we are also in the first place in agreement to the laws of health from the Bible. And I believe that if we follow that, and we also follow that which is our Ministry of Health and wherever you are guidelines, we will be safe and protected. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Pastor. You know what I'm hearing from you really then is we're supposed to create a safe space, a safe space for the competing views and opinions of others. But we're not supposed to push a narrative, push our opinion on anyone to force them to do what we think is best. And I think that really agrees with what Ken would have said earlier, where Ken said the church is giving us the right to freedom of choice. I don't want to say they're giving me any rights, because the church doesn't give me rights. The church is supporting my right to choose.
Right.
Yeah. And I like that. I like that. You know, I like where we can come together and have responsible discussion about these types of topics, as opposed to only hearing from one side, telling me all the time, as Sister Catherine said, go, get the stick. And I also want to add, this is not a program to tell anybody to get vaccinated or not vaccinated. This is about education.
Thank you.
I want to go to Steve because I have something that's been troubling me for a little while. We've been hearing that the government may be looking at making it mandatory for children to be vaccinated. I want you to tell me a little bit about that, Steve. Could the government actually do that? Is it possible? Where, why, how? You know, all of these things. What gives them that authority?
Okay. Mandatory vaccination is nothing new in Barbados, even among children. Every child born in Barbados has to be immunized against polio, measles, mumps, and a whole host of these other childhood diseases. All right. Again, this falls within the government's responsibility to create a safe space for its citizens. All right. So a lot of the noise that we see surrounding the proposal of a lot of noise that we see surrounding the whole notion of vaccination, and more particularly mandatory vaccination, if we are honest, we will see that vaccination is nothing new, certainly not in Barbados. I mean, I remember as a child, when measles was a serious childhood problem, we will be lined up at primary school and go down to the headmistress's office, and we will all take a lump of sugar with some medicine on it, though in the best of circumstances, or you'll take a vaccination from the nurse who came out from the local health center. So this is nothing new. All right. What has to happen, of course, is that the government, that the policymakers, politicians, must be guided by the experts, by the science, to determine whether a particular type of vaccination, whatever you want to call it, treatment, is appropriate for children between the ages of 5 and under 18, 5 and 12, yes. Because I think now the children between 12 and 18 they can take the Pfizer vaccination and so on. So as far as I'm aware, that there's ongoing study among the experts to drop the age limit to vaccinate younger children. All right. And again, this is part of government's duty to ensure that the jurisdiction over which they have authority is safe. Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I want to thank you for that. I see your hand, Rochelle, and your question may be the same as mine. I want to talk about this thing called in locus parentis, which essentially I understand to be that educational institutions can stand in the gap as parent to make the best decision for all of the students collectively. I just want to know if you can help me with that, because I could be wrong.
In some circumstances, the school can take that, take on that position. For example, in administering punishment and control over the child while he is at school. All right. Well, in this modern phenomenon, no, that becomes less and less relevant. But when prior to COVID, when a child is deposited at school, the responsibility for that child's safety and welfare falls on the school, headed personified by the school principal. In that way, the principal can administer the appropriate punishment, even corporal punishment, and basically put measures in place for the safety of children. It does not specifically extend to administering medication, but wisdom would dictate that if a school official sought to provide some form of medication to a child, the parents must be informed first to ensure that the child wouldn't have an allergic reaction and so forth to the particular thing that's being, medication that's being administered. So yes, the school stands in loco parentis vis-a-vis the child while the child is in their care. This extends to school hours, immediately before school, on the way to school, and slightly after school, after school hours when they're leaving.
Okay. I heard you talking about the school itself. does that extend to the Ministry of Education in any way? Because you've said that we've had mandatory vaccination for school age children for a while. Do they use that same principle as a means of ensuring compliance with those mandatory vaccinations?
I do not think so, because the government has not taken the position of having persons and even children. The government has not taken a definite position that it would impose mandatory vaccination. I saw in the chat there, someone asked the question whether a school can have their child vaccinated without their permission. I would say that would not be a wise move at all. Right? And in light of the kind of discussion that Corona has thrown up, that is why the government has been hesitant in seeking to impose mandatory vaccination across the board, whether it's for children or adults. I'm not saying they can't do it. Government can certainly legislate for it, and there may be good reason for it in the appropriate circumstances. But certainly because of the discussion that has been generated, the government has not taken that step as yet.
Okay, I see two hands. Sister Rochelle.
Yes, please. I wanted to know, we know some people are having adverse effects from the vaccine. We know this. Why will some people want to subject their children to or expose their children to this vaccine, which doesn't cure anything or prevent anything? You know, people are not unwise, they are not dumb as some people may think, because I've sat in forums where there are some people that are saying, because you are not vaccinating, or you're foolish or you're dumb because you are standing up for your rights. Well, all of this is taking away people's rights. And then you're going to say that you're going to vaccinate children against parents' wishes, because eventually that is what is going to come down to. If you're not vaccinated,
that has not been a position that has been taken by any authority in Barbados. The government has not said that it will insist that children be vaccinated against their parents' will. That is not the case.
So when does it stop? My question is it a possibility that it's going to be mandated that our children will not be able to go to school without this vaccination?
Now, again, I alluded an analogy I made, or rather, one of the foundation principles that I started up with. COVID-19 is a contagious disease. If people around you are sick with it, it can be transmitted. So therefore, that is why we have been counseled as one of the measures to combat this thing to distance. Prior to COVID, you had a situation where if a child is ill at school, especially with the flu or something contagious of that nature, in order to return, before the child can return to school, he has to produce a medical certificate, a health certificate certifying that he has recovered. And this certificate has to be certified by a doctor, a medical doctor, right? So the same principle applies to COVID. COVID is an infectious, highly contagious disease. So we cannot have persons who bear the risk of them contracting and spreading it, mixing with others. Now, at present, we don't have children returning to schools yet. We don't know when that will be. We don't know whether it will be in January or next March or whenever. But certainly in light of the experience of COVID, when government deems it safe enough for that to happen, I am sure that one of the conditions for returning would be a health certificate certifying that you have a clean bill of health, including COVID-19. And possibly, if it becomes necessary for children under 12 years old to be vaccinated, that may very well be a requirement.
And the reason for that is to keep persons safe. Because that's one of the school's first duties, to ensure that those who attend there are safe when they're there. All right. So now, yes, it is a person's choice whether they choose to be vaccinated or not. And again, like I said before, vaccination is but one of the measures that is being used to fight this thing. All right. Persons can have reasonable objections, whether if you have a medical condition that may mitigate against you having this vaccine and so on, philosophical, whatever. But understand, your rights cannot exist in a vacuum, because in a situation like that, particularly when you're facing a contagious disease, the exercise of your rights risk me being able to enjoy mine. So if person A is presented as a risk of infecting other persons, then he may find himself not being able to enjoy some of the same things that he enjoyed prior to when he had COVID. Persons may require him, for example, if he's not vaccinated, to be tested periodically to ensure that he does not carry a disease that can affect everybody. And as it relates to schools, particularly primary schools, we all know, and let's be honest, ladies and gentlemen, little children, daycare centers, primary schools are germ factories. You know why? Because their children can't keep from up on it one another. They're always touching and so on. That's their nature. And that's how this thing spreads. All right? So it's not a case of a child being discriminated against because he may not be vaccinated or what have you. The persons who are managing the institution must ensure that the persons coming there are not a risk to the others, so that everybody is safe. So when children return to school, it may be a requirement that they produce a vaccination certificate, or they produce a certificate indicating that they've been tested over the last 7 days, 3 days, what have you, and they are negative. Because we cannot risk importing this disease into institutions again. If not, we back where we started. Again, like I said
Thank
before.
you.
Sorry.
Sorry.
As I mentioned, rights cannot be looked upon, cannot be viewed in isolation. I don't live on this earth by myself. So I can't exercise my rights without reference to persons around me, because my behavior affects them. So one must be cognizant of the effects that our actions will have on those around us. So those are some of the things that may be put in place at the appropriate time. Whether, I don't know when that will be, but that's where we are at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Steve. I just want to add to what you said. I see some hands. I saw Sister Shirley Carrington, Sister Pam, and Ken. I'm going to let you come in after. But just to add, you were talking about a certificate being required. That's actually in the education regulations. Many of us may not know that, but Section 27 says that a principal is not to allow a student in unless they have evidence from a medical certificate that the child has been immunized against communicable diseases in accordance with the provisions of the health services regulations. And those regulations we know could be amended to add COVID-19. And the other thing that it says...
One minute, with the greatest respect, I would suggest to you that the legislation would not need to be amended to add COVID-19. It says
I was going to come to that.
Contagious diseases, and COVID-19 is anything, is contagious. So let's all get bent out of shape and believe that COVID is presenting something new and so on. It's presenting something new because of the fact that it's widespread. But again, mandatory vaccination in Barbados, even among children, is nothing new. It is not.
The other thing I wanted to add to what you said, there are two things in those regulations that many persons are not aware of. We know that they can't beat our children and all these other things, but what Steve says in relation to the certificate saying that a person is clear, that's also in the regulations. And the other thing that I saw in the regulations, and this goes to something that Rochelle said, about consent, the chief medical officer can speak to a principal and advise that they wish to seek consent for a child to be vaccinated or immunized, but they have to get the permission of the parents. So it's interesting, that we talk about these things, but these things are already in place. They already exist in our laws. Sister Shirley?
Yeah, my question is that there might be a particular vaccine that the government is stipulating that children take to go into school. And there are 5 available vaccines on the market in Barbados. Suppose a parent prefer a different vaccine to what the government is requiring students to take. How will that affect the child going to school?
The thing about it is that there's only one vaccine that I'm aware of that has been approved for children. So until the others are, that's where the challenge is going to be in there. So I don't know how we would address that part. We go to Sister Pam.
Sorry, I was just trying to get unmuted. I just want to put it out there. The query concern was raised in terms of some person taking the vaccine and getting severely ill. I just want it to be known that pretty much all drugs can have that effect on persons. We do have a pharmacovigilance arm to the Barbados Drug Service, and all such complications or adverse reactions are reported, and it is a worldwide team, and we get the various adverse reactions, and we see exactly what is happening, and the necessary corrective measures are put in place. So adverse reactions to the vaccine is nothing new. It can happen to pretty much any drug, even Panadol. You can have an adverse reaction to that. So I would not like persons to think that, okay, this COVID-19 vaccine, it is out there and it's causing severe reactions and so on, because this is something that can happen with any drug that you're taking. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Ken.
Common sense has to prevail. You can take my hand away, ready? Common sense has to prevail at some point in time, all right? We band about certain terms, and we're very comfortable with these terms. One of these terms that we band about is don't spread, and another term is safe zone. Now, I don't know, from a common layman, if you say to me that this pre-medication does not stop me from getting a breakthrough infection, it does not stop me from spreading it, and as we've seen in the UK, it's spreading like crazy. How do we decide to say safe? How can that area where I am, where I have taken this jab, how do I make an area safe if I can still spread it, or I myself can still get it? How do I make it safe? I think we have to be careful with that type of phraseology. I think we have to be very careful, especially in the light of all of the evidence, the scientific evidence that we have before us. When we look at the medical journals and the ones that are here for peer review, we see all kinds of things happening. And I think that the whole left and right arguments are going to be going back and forth about these pre-medications, aka vaccines, will continue unless we find a different narrative. And I want to posit a different narrative. And the narrative I want to posit is treatment. I really want to posit treatment, because it is clear to me that whether you have taken the vaccine or not, some people are still going to be hurt. Sister Pam just said that all the drugs, it don't matter, all the drugs give at some point, depending on the person's physiology and their response to the antigen or whatever, it can have a negative side effect. If the statistics are saying that 98% of the persons who take the vaccine do well, and 2% either have an adverse reaction or they die, shouldn't we be looking at why the 2%? Because it's clear to me that somehow your body is developing some robust response to either the vaccine or to the wild virus. Shouldn't we be looking, and that's why I say I want to change the narrative, should we be looking at treatment instead of trying to push something that may or may not work for your type of body? Right now, we have treatments that are available, some better than others. And I know that Pfizer is working on one now that will inhibit the protease, the 3CL protease. It will stop it from trying to cut the protein and to divide. So once you can stop that protease from doing that replication, we're good, we're done, it's over. It's the same thing that ivermectin does, right? And it's the same thing that this other drug does. So there are drugs on the market that I know that we can use to kill this thing and stop it from spreading. And we still have to answer the other issue of, well, the medical doctors so far have showed that children under 12 are in an extremely low risk, 0.0 whatever percent risk. So trying to force their bodies that are now trying to learn how to handle in producing antibodies, and let me just say quickly, producing the B cell, because the B is more important to analyze, because the B is the memory one. And if he continues, as the science is showing, that the B cells has good memory over a long period of time, remembering, hey, I know what you look like, I'm gonna stop you from coming inside my body, I'm gonna get you out and expunge you. If the B cell can continue doing that production years and years down the road, we are good. We are good, because you had a strong a positive, proper immune response to the antigen or to the spike that is put in. And incidentally, there are about 25 different proteins on that virus. And I know that Sister Diamond was talking before about variants, and we didn't really get to delve deep into that. But to me, I would love to change the narrative instead of trying to get a safe that we really cannot determine, because we don't know every person's body type or if they would respond positively to the wild virus or to these pre-medications, because we don't know. Let's nip it in the bud before we do know. And we do know that there are drugs there that can stop it and stop its spread. And I want to posit that.
All right, thanks, Ken. I just want to add what Dr. Dupuy said earlier. A lot of the reinfections in the UK, she said, are as a result of persons not being fully vaccinated based on the change in the definition and whatnot. So when we're saying whatever we're saying, we have to take those things into account.
No, I don't think you understood what she was saying. It is that the goalpost is moving, because
that's what I'm saying.
Okay,
that's what
okay,
I'm saying.
Good, right, okay.
We together.
All right, good.
Sister John, I see your hand in the air.
Hi. I just wanted to ask a question, because I know I've heard the government saying that they want to get to the 70 or 80% herd immunity. I think that's what they're saying. But I think what they're trying to get to is the 70 or 80% vaccine immunity, because if they aren't taking into consideration persons that would have gotten the virus and would have recovered naturally, which would now have those natural antibodies, then they could only be looking to get to that percentage in terms of vaccine immunity. And I think that there are studies out there that show that natural immunity is about 13 times. I think it is more effective than vaccine immunity. So my two questions would be, one, as it relates to treatment for the virus, because there are persons who have caught the virus and have recovered naturally, right? And I don't know if they're more so here in Barbados than do I think that they are. So why isn't anything being done to test those persons to see what either they may have been doing or what it may be about their immune system that would have allowed them to recover naturally, as opposed to someone that would have had to get the vaccination to recover? And two, when they speak about these safe zones and the herd immunity, what I'm trying to understand is, okay, so we reached the level of herd immunity that we want, 80% for vaccinated. Let's say that is reached today. What happens tomorrow? Is it that, so today, 80% is unvaccinated. So, you know, if there's a breakout or someone has the virus, the workplace has to shut down and employees have to be tested. But tomorrow, if they reach the 80% level of herd immunity and there's a breakout in the school or the workplace or what's not, then there's no need to shut down anymore. How I'm trying to understand what they mean when they say they want to reach this level of herd immunity. What will happen differently? You get to take off your mask. What will happen differently?
If I could jump in, I want to deal with the safe zones question because that's the next thing we have here. But in relation to, and I know Trinidad has it slightly different to us, so I'm gonna come to you for your perspective on that, Diamond, and then we'll talk about ours. But in relation to herd immunity and all the other things that you have raised, I think this is something we dealt with early on, where we said the vaccine is an additional layer of protection, so that you keep doing everything else that you've been doing, even though you have that level in place. I don't know if anything is going to change. I'm not going to deal in supposition. I am sticking straight with what I know it to be based on what has been said at this point. We really are running low on time. I just looked at the time and realized we were well over the time I said we were going to. So what I want us to look at would be the safe zones. And I'm going to start that discussion by saying that my reading of the legislation speaks to the staff members creating a safe place for other persons to come into, whether it is through testing or vaccination. It doesn't say you have to be vaccinated, even though other persons are saying that. The interval of testing is different based on if you've contracted the disease, if you've been vaccinated, or if you've not been vaccinated. And to my mind, I understand it to mean that a person can feel safe going into that space because the likelihood of transmission is low or lower, as opposed to this is, well, no, because we know this space is COVID-free, because we have evidence through testing from these persons that tells us they don't have COVID, as opposed to all of us have to be vaccinated to go into this space, which I think is what it is in Trinidad. So you can take it away and go from there. I'll start with you, Steve. I hope you've had a chance to look at that piece of legislation.
Unfortunately, I must confess I did not. So I will be guided by your comments because I didn't get a chance to read the legislation at all. I must confess that. So I'm not going to proffer any opinion on it. But my understanding is that, as you pointed out, the objective is to make the place as safe as possible. And early on in the discussion, people were raising a hue and cry about safe and so on. Look, let's be honest and not get wrapped up in semantics and split hairs. When I made the point that the school's duty is to ensure that the place is safe, that means that those who manage the school must ensure that those who come there, that the plant doesn't expose people to injury, or those coming would not, and in the circumstance of COVID, persons coming there would not be knowingly placed at risk of contracting COVID. Hence, you may require persons to be vaccinated or present a certificate
indicating that they are being tested and they are shown to be negative. That is a reasonable approach to fight this virus and wrestle it to the ground. That's what I would say on that for now.
Thank you, Steve. Anybody else, feel free to jump in.
Okay, I was waiting for Diamond.
You were. I didn't know. As
Excuse me, just before Diamond comes in, Mr. Moderator, I have to leave at this point because I have a 6 o'clock meeting. I just stayed on with you a little longer.
Well, thank you for being with us, Pastor.
Yes, and if I may say a last word, not necessarily, I hope it's not premature, is that all of us who are here and those whom we have to minister to, we want to make sure that there are two things we have to take into consideration. How is God, or would God relate to this pandemic situation, one, and to make sure also that our appreciation and action to whatever is happening is in keeping with the law of the land, as long as we are not breaking any biblical or godly principle. Our principles, one, and two, I'm enforcing that we take good care of our health. Make sure that our immune system is strong, and there are so many natural things that can do that. And everybody's body is not the same, and the medical profession has a way of keeping folks healthy, and we believe God invested and entrusted that to them as well. I do hope and pray that this discussion will make a big difference in our attitude and appreciation for not just from a biblical perspective, but also from the health authorities around us. God bless you. Thank you very much. And I have to take my leave at this point.
Thank you, Pastor. Thanks for being with us. Yes, Sister Diamond.
Excuse me, Mario, not to cut in, but I also have to leave, so I would just
Well, thank you too, Steve. I think this is where we're going to wrap up.
Okay. I will begin where it started, indicating that the vaccination itself is simply another weapon that can be used in the arsenal to fight this thing. Right? Vaccinations are nothing new to Barbados. Mandatory vaccination is nothing new. It is something that has been used throughout the 20th century to wrestle and defeat and eliminate certain diseases like smallpox, polio, whooping cough, measles, and so on and so forth. And we need not be overly concerned that it is possible that we can succeed against COVID using the vaccine as well as all the other mechanisms. Pastor Mccallum referred to the need of having, and Sister Pamela, I think it was, referred to the necessity of having a strong, healthy body at its foundation, right? Because if our bodies are afflicted with comorbidities and so forth, and NCDs and so forth, the vaccine will help you because your immune system already compromised. So we must use all and implement all the safety measures to give ourselves the greatest chance of fighting off or becoming immune to this thing, right? There's a saying among soldiers and so on, in a gunfight, guns are good, but more guns are even better. So that's where we want to aim, right? We ought not to look at this vaccine as something that is sinister and so on, nor is it a silver bullet, but it is another weapon that can be used in this fight. All the weapons are to be used together to give ourselves the greatest chance of becoming immune, or if we're infected, and applying these mechanisms significantly reduce the chance of infection and increase the chance of successfully recovering. We should apply every single safety measure. Temperature checks, distancing, masking, good health, health reform, vaccination, and whatever else comes along that the scientists have approved for use. So thank you for being able to share what they can with you, and I wish you all the best. Good evening.
Thank you, Steve. Yes, Diamond?
Yeah, well, I would just also share my last words as well. At the end of the day, vaccination remains your choice, your personal choice. But I want us to listen to the words of Sister Ellen White in the book Ministry of Healing. When I read this, it resonated. She says God cares about each of us. It is not only our spiritual life that he cares about, but also our physical, emotional, and social life. And she then referenced John when he wrote the text in 3 John 2, "Beloved, I pray, I wish above all things that you may prosper and be in health, even as your soul prospers." And through the health message, Adventists have sought to experience and practice the healing ministry of Jesus. Ellen White, one of 3 co-founders of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, received a call from God to be his messenger. Her prophetic ministry was not to take the place of or add to scripture, but rather to point us to the Bible principles and apply them where necessary for the development of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. But the Holy Spirit also led her to guide the church in its major ministries of publishing, health, education, and world mission. And so her visions were broad, and it supported the work of health. And yes, there is a lot of debate on the vaccine. Yes, it is still your personal choice. But at the end of the day, my wish, just as John would have written, is that we all, prosper and be in health. Do what you think is right for you. Ensure that you continue to adhere to health protocols, and let's all be safe.
Thank you, Diamond. Ken?
I want to echo what Sister Diamond said there just now, because our desire is to see persons prosper and be in health and to stop persons from dying. I really want to see the death come to an end. It doesn't matter if somebody is sinister or they have some plan for you to get rid of you or all that. God's word is very clear that his people will be able to tread on serpents and not be harmed. They will be able to receive a scorpion sting and not get damaged from it. God's word is very clear. His word is always also clear that we need to seek truth and pursue it. And if there are areas of discomfort that the Holy Spirit is saying, no, something isn't right here, or this may not be good for you, then I think you should be very careful to follow the leadings of the Holy Spirit. I think that in this whole scenario of vaccines, as they call them, that we need to really examine and give the whole truth. And if we really want to have herd immunity, then let's include everything that's involved in that process. I heard Sister Pam earlier talking about herd immunity, but our government officials are saying they're not going to be including those persons, as Jan C. was highlighting. They're not going to be including those persons who have contracted the virus naturally and have overcome it and have a strong immunity. So I know that there is a study out of UWI, I've been told, that shows that Barbados is at like 90% or thereabout, including those who have been who have caught the virus naturally and have overcome it. And so when you look at the overall immunity, it's looking pretty good. But to hear this comment this evening from our government is a little unsettling. But needless to say, God's people, we got to keep trusting and keep going forward. There are treatments that are available. If you're not comfortable with one, you ask your other doctor about the other one. There are virologists that we can speak to that can help guide us a little bit more. Do your research and just keep God in front of everything you're doing. And please stop looking down on each other. Stop it. Stop it. A person who is not comfortable because they're searching, you must not discredit their points or make them feel like a second-class citizen. Stop doing it. It's the same process that we do with female ordination. One set of people believe you should, another people said, oh, you shouldn't. and people got scripture to prove back and forth, but yet we respect each other as a bona fide Seventh-day Adventist. Please, let's treat each other with a lot of respect, and let's try to make sure that we stop looking down on each other, and we do, as Steve was saying, try to find the best routes or the safest routes that we can go forward. And if you know that something isn't making logical sense, find what makes logical sense and employ it. God bless you.
I want to thank the panelists this evening for coming out and making the discussion what it was. It really would not have been the same without you and without the members in attendance as well. I want to thank you for your comments and your questions. I want to apologize to those persons on YouTube. I was trying my best to monitor the YouTube and the Zoom and all the other things. So we did not get to address all of your questions and comments, but thank you as well for your active participation in the chat on YouTube. We're supposed to have a song now, but based on the time, I think we can go straight to our closing prayer tonight. And I want to say, or rather echo the sentiments of basically everyone. You know, at the end of the day, it's up to you. It's your choice whether you do or don't get the vaccine. And you ought not to be treated any differently if you do or don't. That's the reality. And as Ken said, you know, we've got to cut it out. We got to treat each other with love in everything that we do and are doing. Just bow your heads with me for a word of prayer. Lord, as we come to you, we want to thank you for this discussion this evening, for the ability to come out and to express our varying views and to have our questions answered, to be respected, to understand that this is a matter of choice, to understand that it comes down to being led by you as to what we are to do, whether we are to take a vaccine or not. But at the end of the day, Lord, we thank you for the ability to love each other despite the choice one makes, whether it's in agreement with what we believe or not. We ask, Lord, that you will help us to see ways that we can do that, to understand the best way, the right words to share with someone when we are in disagreement in what people like to call a hot debate, so that at the end of the day, we all feel heard, we all feel respected, we don't feel as though we are forced into a corner or ostracized, feel as though we are less than others, simply because we've exercised our choice differently to everybody else. We pray, Lord, that you will continue to show us the way through this pandemic, continue to protect us as we go about our daily activities, Lord, and continue to show who you are, how great you are by showing up and showing off. We know, Lord, that your promises don't mean that we will not have affliction, but we know that in the midst of the storm, we will get through. We may not see the way out, but we know that you will deliver us, Lord. And ultimately, we look forward to that day when you will burst the clouds and take us with you. In Jesus' name, amen. Again, I want to say thanks to everyone for coming out. Thanks to the panelists for the participation, and thanks to you, the members, who made it what it was. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you. God bless.
You're welcome.